Summer's coming up, so we want to talk action. But we're not in the mood for picking favorites. Instead, let's take a deep dive into 5 more brilliant moments, this time in action. First up, we've got a brilliant little moment from The Raid. About 25 minutes into a stealthy raid up a gang-controlled high-rise, the heroes are discovered, their guards are killed, their communication cut off, and the lights are cut. All of a sudden, they're trapped, and they'll need to battle their way out to survive. But before that happens, they hole up in a stairwell to prepare as the big bad puts a price on their heads over the loudspeaker. We hear a sound, which the next cut connects to a glance, which a wonderful slow pan then connects to the doorknob. There's someone at the door. Everyone gets in place. Let's do this. The sound design, music, and push-inniness of the shots are all communicating very clearly and conventionally that something is about to happen. But then we punch in on Jaka's face, and his eyes twitch. The punch-in tells us something is happening internally, and our first guess would be fear, but the head turn directs our focus elsewhere. There's something else going on. And then we see it. Now we know more than the characters, and the tension of dramatic irony is introduced. What's going to happen? How will it happen? Will they realize this second threat in time? So in order to render the tension visual between a perceived threat in one direction and the real unperceived threat in that other, the directors cut between 2 axes as indicated by the eyes. One horizontal between man and door, and one vertical between man and unknown threat above. And then the trigger is pulled. Holy shit. Talk about impressive visual storytelling. The muzzle emits a beautiful glow. From the attacker's perspective, the glow briefly illuminates their unsuspecting prey. A shot on a face, shining in the glow, they are seen, followed by gun barrels raising. The juxtaposition of the shots tells us what they're raising towards, and then chaos. Without words or explanation, we understand the exact dynamics of the situation. The tension is laid out before us with clearly delineated opposition. The stakes are obvious, the danger is visceral. All too often, bad action injures its stars or kills off its supporting cast to no effect. It's the generic red shirt death, and it can make action boring. Why should we care about our heroes if their plot armor is so thick it's more like plot invincibility? If they can do parkour chases through the streets a day after their intestines were eviscerated, we stop suspending our disbelief, and even worse, paying attention to what's happening. The stabs don't matter, so why should we worry? And that's where the raid succeeds. Because a single misplaced bullet costs them lives, and we know exactly why, and we see it coming like a runaway trolley that we're powerless, just like Jaka, to stop. If The Raid is one brilliant little moment of clearly communicated visual action, Mad Max Fury Road is one after another, after another, after another for about 2 straight hours. Which sounds like it might get tedious or straightforward and boring, but Miller manages to be so absolutely clever about it you don't even realize it's happening. You see, Bruce Lee had it right. Bad guys really only can attack one at a time and be understood. We can only really follow one line of action that quickly. But clever action directors like Miller stagger out the conflicts such that they aren't happening all at once. Consider Ip Man's battle of 10 black belts. It's really just one-on-one after one-on-one, but it's staggered much more intricately than Enter the Dragon was, so it looks like he's doing 10 things at once. He isn't. He's doing one thing after one thing after one thing, all woven together like a tapestry, zigzagging between every character in the room so that everyone is involved in the singular event. So sure, it looks like Furiosa and Max are fighting 18 different battles at once, but in practice, we're not getting told 18 different stories. We're being told one single story that just so happens to involve all 18 battles and tracks linearly throughout them all. Check it out. I go back to narrate this clip like a book, you'll see how linearly each bit flows into the next. Stone Cold Steve Austin here fires a torpedo directly into the steering wheel so Max can't turn it anymore. It pulls out the steering wheel and then traps Max's hands. Prego and Redhead jump out, grab the bolt cutters, and release his hand. Problem solved. Furiosa quickly attaches a makeshift steering wheel, but they're headed straight for a rock and can't turn in time. Joe is like, oh shit, my baby mama's about to get squished, and sure enough, they smash right into it. But she's okay! However, her newly injured foot slips on her newly bleeding blood, and the newly damaged door gives way, so she falls from the rig directly into the path of Joe, who swerves, rolls his truck, and ends the pursuit. That's a pretty goddamn linear story of the action. But look at how many people are involved. Max, Furiosa, Blondie, Lindsay Lohan, Joe, and Andre the Giant. All the major players have bit parts in this 1 minute of skirmish. Miller is the master of finding clever ways to temporarily disable certain characters or keep them at a distance so that he can make way for others in the conflict without leaving anyone bouncing around awkwardly in the background, like Max here with his hand. This lets the Sirens and Furiosa shine. Or Joe and gang here. This lets the rig get away to make space for the next conflict. Or even the whole reason Joe is on his own in the first place, because the rest of his warband got stuck behind some rocks and he was the only one with four-wheel drive in a goddamn rocky desert apocalypse apparently. But it gets better. You know how in a stand-up comics routine when they've already had their fun with some silly bit and then 10 minutes later they cleverly reincorporate it back into their latest joke with the callback? Miller does this with just about everything, but instead of humor, he uses violence. Just like my parents. Anyway. Those wire cutters, they were a key plot point just a short while back. Even the rickety door and bum leg are planted moments earlier, which brings us to our final point, the characters. This action sequence wouldn't be much more interesting than actual dominoes if it were just clever pieces of shrapnel banging into each other in one long chain explosion. But in between the explosions and feats of strength and moments of cleverness, Miller peppers in just the right amount of character. The individual characters are essential cogs in the Rube Goldberg machine, and their decisions are both entirely warranted by the action that comes immediately before and entirely impactful to the consequences that come about after. And he does this by planting who they are and then paying it off in their action. Time and time again, we're given indication of how important Joe's unborn child is to him when the flamethrower is shut off, when he's forced to hold his fire because she throws her body in front of Furiosa, and immediately before her spill on the fake out where we hear and see his warning yell. So when she actually does fall and Joe swerves and nearly kills himself and his crew, not only is it believable, it's inevitable, which is what makes this whole sequence so bloody brilliant. We watched a ton of action sequences to pick out our favorite moments for this list, and one of the recurring features of some of our less favorite bits of action is something I want to call Gestalt Action. Gestalt Action is non-specific. It's not about the individual bullets or even necessarily the individual people. It's happening at scale. Army A is pushing back Army B. The good guys are beating up the bad guys. We're dying out here. It communicates the broad strokes of a fight, which is important, especially if it's a massive fight. But if a fight scene ends up being a little too gestalty, the individual component parts start not to matter. If each gunshot is a drop in a bucket, we stop really caring about the impact and pain of each gunshot. We're just waiting for the bucket to overflow. But when each drop in the bucket is the exact drop that sends it overflowing into the next one, that's something special. Peter Jackson is brilliant at this. Or he was in Lord of the Rings. This kind of stuff is noticeably lacking in The Hobbit. But at Helm's Deep, he's tackling two massive armies, but somehow we still care about every death and every arrow. We stay focused on the heroes without losing track of the turning tide of the battlefield. This is really hard to do. In fact, there aren't very many movies that do it all that well. Even movies with otherwise brilliant action sequences like Saving Private Ryan's final 30 minutes actually miss a lot of opportunities here. Whereas in the Battle of Helm's Deep, we always know which direction the fight is swinging and even where there are wins and losses on the battlefield, Saving Private Ryan's showdown is much more chaotic. It's easy for us to lose track of the general geometry of the battlefield, such that when characters are being flanked, we aren't quite sure why it's happening, except for that that's what the script says is going on right now. But the main brilliance of Peter Jackson's direction here is what I'm going to call pyramid action. The entire massive battle is the base of the pyramid. It's f***ing huge. It's not easy to keep track of without one of those cool big maps that they have in war rooms with those awesome action figures they push around with sticks. But one level above that, we narrow it down a bit, get a little simpler. We can divide the action into two general sides, Rohirrim versus Uruk-hai. We keep these nice and evenly divided screen left and screen right. It's just good writing and directing. If you pay a little closer attention, you'll realize that the battle is further broken up into two fronts, the walls and the gate, one below the other. But even keeping track of two whole fronts can be tough. So let's take it one step further by giving each of these two fronts some general strategies. There's one strategy at a time being played out in each region by each side of the war. On the offense, they include ladders, mega crossbow ladders, battering rams, and bombs. And on the defense, they include bracing the gates, pushing over ladders, falling back to the keep, and shooting the bomb guys. But this is still a little gestalty. And if we left it here, the whole battle would be told in lots of little montages. We see 3 ladders go up in a row, we know that ladder strategy is winning. We see a couple orcs get stabbed, we know the orcs are getting beat. But PJ don't want to do that. So what does he do? He builds up one more level and gives each strategy a linchpin. This is the tip of the pyramid. Check it out.
Is this it? Is this all you can conjure, Saruman?
In order to win the war, the orcs have to win the wall fight. In order to win the wall fight, they have to breach the walls. In order to breach the walls, they have to blow up some bombs. In order to blow up the bombs, they have to light them. And how do they light them? Well, with the Olympic Torch McGorch over here. And yeah, we admit the Chariots of Fire steez is a little dorky, but look at how brilliantly written it is. It's a single moment with a single action that has a single opposing strategy that is immediately understandable. And when accomplished, gives way to a strategy win that gives way to a front win that gives way to the Uruk-hai gaining the upper hand. This single person turns the tide of the war, and it makes us root for every single arrow. And as a topper, who do we find at the tip of the pyramid? Our heroes. It's Aragorn, seeing the ploy, yelling to Legolas to fire the arrows. They're the ones leading the charge against the main strategies of the enemy. They are the key deciding factors that have the ability to turn the tide of the entire war one way or the other. That's how you make massive battles into personal affairs. You make it so the impact of each decision trickles down the entire pyramid like some kind of action-y Reaganomics, so that this tiny frame-sized moment at the top affects everything down to the very foundation. What's even cooler is that Jackson and his writers managed to tie all of this action deeper still to the characters, their personalities, conflicts, and arcs. We see the melee battle turn into a friendly competition between Gimli and Legolas, which is essential to their movement from adversaries to best friends. That's just great, efficient storytelling. And that's what we want for this list, special moments that reflect character and theme and intricacy in every shot. I mean, really, what makes the difference in a lot of fights? Why does Rocky eventually overcome Drago? Sure, we know it's because he wants it more, or because he's an American, or because he's a fighter, not a quitter, which is cool, but in how many places does the choreography, cinematography, and style reflect this? I mean, it all just comes down to which one the script tells to act tired first. They could have just as easily swapped places if the scene needed to go the other way, but we keep coming back to Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Its fight scenes are so unlike this, it's unbelievable. Crouching Tiger is transcendent in the sense that all the action is specifically choreographed to the character performing it. Even the specific point on their arc and their mental state at the time. Every single moment of each fight is a slice of the greater conflict at hand. For instance, here we can very clearly see Li Mubai's calm getting the best of Jin's childish anger. And here, Shu Lin is learning something about Jin. Here, Jin's ego has her delivering a tirading sermon of a fight, and here, in one of the best choreographed fights of all time, even the lay viewer is, without a word, brought to understand the differences in their abilities and their weapons. Throughout the entire course of the fight, in one brilliant exchange after another, we see Shu Lin's superior martial skills put Jin on the defensive, back her into a corner, only for her to escape by destroying Shu Lin's weapon with her superior blade. Weapon after weapon, Shu Lin lays into Jin with sword and spear, and what the hell are those even called, until finally Jin arrogantly lets Shu Lin take her pick of the litter, so she picks her favorite of them all. Incredible, right? To begin with, skill and weapon strength are immensely complicated and abstract concepts to attempt to communicate with hardly a word. Yet here, we get to feel the power of the sword against the power of the fighter. And this brilliant comedic concept saturates every fiber of the fight, from the performances that put different looks on their faces to the choreography that finds Shu Lin almost exclusively on the offense with Jin parrying blows. Every element tells the greater story. And then, boom, Shu Lin quickly disarms Jin. She's trying to separate her from the weapon that's causing so much trouble. Jin takes her sword back, she's definitely not trying to be separated, and then they make two symmetrical moves against each other. And what happens? In what is absolute choreography brilliance, Shu Lin uses Jin's weapon's insurmountable strength against her, allows it to slice through her sword so that she can carry the blow through with a shortened blade held to her neck. It is a perfect ending of pride versus patience skill to summarize a fight which summarizes the film in what might be the most emotionally intelligent fight scene ever shot. You've probably guessed that we're not the biggest fans of shaky cam fight, huh? Clarity and efficiency and understandability and causality are motherfucking important to us, and it should be obvious by now that seizureful camera work isn't conducive to this. Except, you'd be wrong. We don't like to be namby-pamby cinema old-timers who can't appreciate modern trends. And although the fact that we just said namby-pamby probably means we're much more old-timey than we'd like to be, shaky cam is definitely not all bad. Sure, it's often a big crutch filmmakers can use to make one-on-one fights feel cohesive and continuous and intense and chaotic by hiding the specifics behind the rapid editing and camera movement, instead relying on the gestaltiness of which person's pain grunts you hear more often. But it can also lend itself to a more abstract style of visual storytelling that is no less specific than a George Miller chase. You know what happened, right? And sure, the sound helps, but even if we take it away like this, you still know what's going on, and not just in a I know they're fighting sense, or even I know who's winning sense. You know what's happening all the way down to the which limb is doing what sense. It's not the only way to shoot this action, but it carries the intensity, chaos, and frenetic immersiveness that's unique to shaky cam without sacrificing the clarity that comes with a good action moment. And it does this by getting really caveman with its communication. It's like a masterclass in charades. This shot tells us Tal hits arm. This shot tells us swirly happens. This shot tells us Bourne controls arm. He hits head, he loses knife. Next swirly, head bash, put in corner, struggle, choke. The shots may come fast and shaky, but they're certainly not random, and they're certainly not hiding anything. They're modern dancing, chopping up the action, cutting frequently, and abstracting the fight into its tiny component pieces and letting our brains put them together. And it works. We can follow the chaos in real time because it does what any good action sequence does. It tells us in a straightforward way we can understand exactly what's going on, exactly why it matters, and exactly what's at stake if it fails. That's a good action moment. Oh, yeah, and it looks f***ing awesome too. So there's that. So what do you guys think? You like this kind of list? Got some more thoughts on these moments or others like them? Let us know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe for more CineFix movie lists.